Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
Brian, I'm great. It's hard to believe the Derby is fast approaching. You and I just spent 15 minutes debating the Derby before the show, so let's do it on the air.
To tell you the truth, Matt, I thought we were already taping and that was going to be part of the show. I've been told no, it wasn't part of the show. So let's get on with the show, sir. Let's start down in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Oaklawn Park was the last huge Kentucky Derby prep of 2018, and we saw another big performance from one of the big Kentucky Derby contenders, Magnum Moon, Matt. He's 4 for 4, and as Apollo's Curse, anybody who knows anything about Apollo's Curse will tell you, all 4 of those races came in 2018.
Yeah, the beat goes on with the really good horses this year turning in really good performances, setting up a Kentucky Derby field that is so loaded with talent this year. But back to Magnum Moon, he took it to him and won the race out front. There's been a little bit of concern, Brian, about his drifting out down the stretch in the race, but he looked good in there. What do you think about the bearing out in the stretch?
Yeah, first off, I thought it was a very strong performance from the son of Malibu Moon, Matt. I don't know, I didn't see many people talk about it, but the first half of Furlong was, I thought was a little scary for Magnum Moon because he was getting squeezed just a little bit, and Luis Saez asked him for some speed, and unfortunately, maybe there wasn't a lot of speed required. It didn't seem like anybody really wanted the lead other than Magnum Moon. So therefore, the slow pace was certainly an advantage. But I like the fact that he battled through some tight quarters early to go after that lead. Drifting out the stretch, I think more than anything, Matt, it's greenness. Still inexperienced, obviously. It didn't look like a case of a horse who's got any sort of soreness or a horse who is just really slowing down as they hit the wire. In fact, he was running faster at the end of the race than he was for most of the race before it. So that doesn't really bother me, other than the fact that maybe he still has a few things to learn.
Yeah, Brian, but in today's world and today's Kentucky Derby contenders, most of them still have a lot to learn, with most of them having 5 career starts, 6 career starts. That seems to be the average. So that's the way it is today.
That's right, Matt. And there were good horses, once again, like the Rebel to some extent. And this is why I think Magnum Moon deserves to be one of the favorites. Not only is he 4 for 4 this year, but he's beaten good horses. And again, in the Arkansas Derby, I think he beat a good bunch, maybe not a great bunch. Quip, Solomidi once again, not changing leads, but holding off Combatant. Those are pretty good horses. So the fact that Magnum Moon really sprinted away and won so easily, solid performance. Magnum Moon well on his way. Quip is a good horse, and Solomini's a good horse. Deserved to be one of the field for the Kentucky Derby. Combatant right now is number 21 on the list, Matt. So he might not get in, but probably he will.
Yeah, and interesting with that is that that's the highest ranked Steve Asmussen contender after everything's shaken out on the Derby trail.
Yeah, that's a surprise that Steve Asmussen has none of the top 20 right now. So the Arkansas Derby sends Magnum Moon, the undefeated son of Malibu Moon. We haven't even mentioned, again, Todd Pletcher. What else is new? Todd Pletcher now has 4 major prep winners, although Magnum Moon has won 2 major preps. So I guess he had it before, but Pletcher has 4 major prep winners headed to the Kentucky Derby, and Magnum Moon should be one of the favorites for the race. Now, there was another Kentucky Derby prep, not the points, not the money involved as there was in Arkansas, but it was interesting because my boy Jack, who I like and I think you like to a certain extent, needed some points to secure for sure a place in the Derby, and he did it. Keith DeSormo trained, Kent DeSormo ridden. Matt, it seemed like a perfectly timed ride from the shorter DeSormo. And he got up over a game lightly raced Stone Street horse named Telekinesis.
Yeah, I like your choice of adjectives there, Brian, for the jockey. And before I say anything else, I got to take my hat off to Keith DeSormo and the connections of my boy Jack. They decided not to sit at home and hope that things would shake out for them to get in the Derby field. They went out and on 3 weeks rest, which didn't used to be a big deal, but kind of is nowadays. They went out on 3 weeks rest and took their horse to Keeneland, entered the Lexington, ran a big race, got their 20 points, and secured a nice, safe spot in the field. I take my hat off to them for that. And I do like my boy Jack, Brian. His last 3 races, he's run well in all of them. He seems to be a competitor. He's got a nice turn of foot coming down the stretch. The kind of horse I give in most years, I would give a little bit of an outside chance to get into the top 3 or 4 in the Kentucky Derby. He beat a good field, Telekinesis, Gravitos coming back off of the layoff.
Yeah, Telekinesis was making only the 3rd start of his career. I think he's obviously announced himself as a horse to watch again for Stone Street. But my boy Jack did what he had to do. He's one of those horses, I think, and we even saw it a little bit last year on his strong turf record. He was a very good turf horse. Didn't always win, but always rallied. Then when he got to the Breeders' Cup, he wasn't quite good enough to beat Mendelssohn in the lot, but he was a stakes winner too on the turf. He's kind of showed me the same thing this year, switching to dirt. He wasn't quite good enough for McKinsey in the Sham. Southwest, everything opened up on the rail on a good rail track there in the mud in Oakland Park, and that's another thing. He's able to travel. Then in the Louisiana Derby, I certainly thought he was best, but I'm not real strong on Noble Indy and Lone Sailor, the horses that he couldn't quite get after the terribly wide trip in the Louisiana Derby. And then he beat a horse with only 2 previous starts here in the Lexington. Really nice horse, consistent horse. He's gotten better since he's shown that he will come from back in the pack every time. But yeah, I just don't think this is the type of year for him to make a big dent in the Kentucky Derby, because it is such a good Kentucky Derby field. Keith DeSormo, I agree. The connections here, they did the right thing. 3 weeks before the Lexington, 3 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. That's plenty enough time, but no one does it anymore. I'm glad they did it. Matt, this was another big weekend of racing, and I want to mention some of the others. First, let me get your impression of the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley winner, Sister Charlie, because she was a top European turf filly last year. Her only race in America last year before she got really sick was a strong just miss in the Belmont Oaks. I thought she was absolutely terrific in beating a strong, deep field at Keeneland.
It was a strong, deep field, and apparently she had a really, really very serious lung infection that was really difficult to shake. But anyway, she ran a great race. It was for Chad Brown. Chad Brown had a strong hand, as he always does in the turf races, especially with the girls. And Chad Brown ended up taking the first 3 places in there. Sister Charlie looked really good, and look forward to seeing her on the grass later in the summer.
Sister Charlie, a 4-year-old Irish bred French import, Matt. She's the best turf horse I've seen, female turf horse I've seen in America this year. I was that impressed with her. The other big turf race at Keeneland, Heart to Heart, just keeps doing what he's doing. He got the trip and he finally broke through in the Makers 46 mile. That was nice to see. We should go to Oakland, though. There were a lot of big races at Oakland. My favorite race at Oakland was the Oakland Handicap, because I thought City of Light, moving up from sprinting, and Accelerator, that big cap winner, put on a heck of a show down the stretch.
They sure did. They both traveled out of Southern California to prove that they could race in other places, and it was City of Light who got the best of Accelerate, who was coming off of 2 big wins this year. So they moved up in the handicap division, a division that needs some good horses to show some good stuff.
Yeah, I'm showing my age because I think I called him Accelerator, who was a Phipps and McGahee horse from years and decades ago. Accelerate, of course, was super game coming back the whole stretch at City of Light. Good race. and it was over a second faster than the Arkansas Derby, albeit with a much faster early pace, which helped. Speaking of fast early paces, Whitmore got a fast enough early pace to do his thing coming down the stretch. Exciting finish there. Whitmore wins another one. He wins a lot at Oakland, and he wins a lot of sprint stakes.
Yeah, and I just have to say bravo to Whitmore. It kind of reminded me of the stretch run with Mind Your Biscuits, where at one point it was like, oh, geez, Whitmore doesn't have a chance. And then it was, here he comes. And then he turned it on and went past him. I just love a closer in those sprint races. It's just so exciting.
Absolutely. A thrilling finish and a thrilling win for Whitmore. A thrilling finish in the fantasy stakes. We're going to see some Oaks horses there. Sassy Sienna pulled off a mild upset. She was about 11-1, but her and Wonder Godot just ding-donged it down the stretch, and it was a close finish. Nice to see that. And then Unique Bella was 1-5 in her first race at Oaklawn Park. She got off to a bad start. She looked like she was a little bit too pressing of the early lead, and then she really didn't have a lot left for Unbridled Mo, who came down the lane and went by pretty easy in the Grade 1 Apple Blossom.
Yeah, it was just a really strange start for Unique Bella because you can't see it. You can see that she broke slow in the replay, but you have to see a photo of it. It wasn't your typical bad break where their front feet go down and they almost touch their nose to the track. It was like all of her legs went out and she was almost on her belly in the gate and had to pop back up. It was just a very, very bizarre start, which obviously put her at a big disadvantage in that race.
Big disadvantage, yes, but I would still say it was a disappointing performance from the talented Jerry Hollendorfer filly. Matt, with the final preps being run, we now know the 20-horse field for the Kentucky Derby, barring any unforeseen circumstances where some of them can't run. I already mentioned Combatant is the first horse that wants to move up. I'm going to go down, Matt, let's do it this way. I'm going to go down the entire 20-horse field, and I'm going to do it in points order. And I'd like you to make a real quick comment of every horse in the field, and then we'll just move on down the list all the way down to number 20, who I think is named for a famous football player. You ready, sir?
I am ready.
All right, let's start with Magnum Moon.
Magnum Moon, winner of the Arkansas Derby. The last 5 years, the winner has been one of the horses that has won a 100-point qualifying race. Magnum Moon is one of those horses.
Unbeaten, but he will be tested severely in this Kentucky Derby. I don't necessarily like him if he's too close to the pace, but I think he is tractable enough to do something different in the Derby, so he's a danger. Number 2, Good Magic.
Good Magic is getting better. Last year, he won the BC Juvenile on the third start of his training cycle. The Kentucky Derby will be the third start in his training cycle this year.
Absolutely. And that third start last year, the BC Juvenile, was really a huge performance, especially considering he shipped out to Del Mar. Chad Brown, you got to respect his trainer. Bluegrass performance is not good enough to win this Kentucky Derby, Matt. I'm convinced of that. But I think the trip, the fact that he can rally, and the fact that he should improve again makes him dangerous. Number 3 is Audible.
The winner of the Florida Derby and the Holy Bull. Let's not forget that he has had a pretty good darn year. Maybe we're forgetting a little bit because he isn't the latest big winner. I like Audible.
You like Audible more than I do. I do respect that he has a real, pretty explosive move, and it seems like he can be in different positions early in the race. I do really question the fields that he's beaten in Florida. I think this could be a rude awakening for him, but certainly he's one of my big 7 and another horse to fear a little bit, the New York bred, one of the second already from Todd Pletcher. Another from Todd Pletcher, Matt, Noble Indy.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is another Todd, one of the 4 from the Todd Pletcher barn, won the Louisiana Derby. It was just by a neck from the late charging My Boy Jack. Maybe the number 4 of the 4 Todd Pletchers.
He's my number 4 for sure, Matt. I'm not as high as him as many, or I know as you are. I think he beat a weak field in the Louisiana Derby, or relatively weak compared to the rest of the horses in here. I didn't think he was best that day. I thought my boy Jack was best. He struggled with Mississippi a little bit in an allowance race, and he was beaten by less than great horses in the Risen Star. I just don't see him running a huge Derby. I could be wrong. Number 5 is Vino Rosso.
Vino Rosso from the Wood Memorial, another fourth Todd Pletcher. Loved what I saw from him. I loved how he was willing to fight it out and bump and grind going down the stretch. He looks like a horse that can handle traffic and trouble in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, that's one of the many things I like about this one. I think he's bred for a distance. Heard nothing but good things about how he trains, or even when he was growing up on the farm. Vino Rosso, like you said, he was part of the bumping. He caused the bumping maybe, but he seems like a tough horse who's only going to get better, and he's only going to get better at a distance. He can rally. I like Vino Rosso quite a bit. Number 7 is Bolt Doro.
Bolt Doro most recently ran second to the Phenom Justify. What does that mean? It's hard to know. But I know that this horse has never raced outside of Southern California, and I'm very concerned about that.
To me, he's the most battle-tested horse on the list because he's run against nothing but good horses for the last 6 races or so, 5-6 races now. He didn't win the Santa Anita Derby, but I don't think Justify is going to be alone on a 112 easy lead again. I think Bolt Doro moves forward in his 3rd race. I think he's got a good running style. Another big threat for me. Number 8 on our list, Matt, or I guess that would be number 7, is Enticed.
Enticed has got a lot of points, but I didn't like what I saw from Enticed in the Wood Memorial when the battle started up with, and the bumping started up with Vino Rosso. To me, Enticed seemed to back away from that. I don't like him a lot in the Derby, Brian.
Yeah, he's a nice horse who should win more stakes races, Matt. He's already won a couple graded stakes, but I think the final 16th of the mile in the Wood tells the story for me. Vino Rosso taking off and Enticed tiring. I think the same thing's going to happen in the Kentucky Derby. Now we get to number 8 on the list, Matt, and he might be the most scary horse on the list to me, and that's Mendelssohn.
Yes, we got question marks just because he's got limited dirt experience, but boy, did he look good in the UAE Derby. We know he knows how to travel across the pond, winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year for Aidan O'Brien. He's going to come in at the last minute for the Kentucky Derby, so we're not going to get a lot of hubbub about him before. So I think he's got a good chance, though.
Yeah, he scares me, Matt, because I think on his best, he could be the best horse in this crop. There's no doubt about that. The UAE Derby is proof of that. Breeders' Cup Juvenile was wonderful. I do worry about his dirt experience. I also worry a little bit about probably 3 favorites, or maybe 3 of the top 4 favorites are all speedy types: Mendelssohn, Justify, Magnum Moon. If they worry about each other too much early, that could make it tougher on all of them. But like I said, he is a danger coming from Europe by way of Dubai. Next on the list, Matt, is the likely favorite. Number 9 on the points list is Justify.
Yeah, Brian, and we may not agree on everything on the list, but I think we agree on a lot of things about Justify, and that is that this is a tremendously talented horse, but we got a lot of question marks. Again, another horse who has never left Southern California. He's only got 3 starts. He likes to be out front. He's only beaten 14 horses total in his career. He's going to face more than that in 1 race in the Derby.
Yeah, another who could be the most talented 3-year-old in this crop. There's no doubt about that, but I think the obstacles are huge. Never raced away from Santa Anita, only faced 1 good horse, and that was with the easy lead in the Santa Anita Derby. I'm just not sure that he can overcome everything. If he wins this race against this kind of Derby field, I'm ready to call him something truly special. Number 10 on the list, Matt, Quip.
Yeah, Brian, and I feel pretty certain, I'm not sticking my neck out. I think in the horses that we just went over, we named the Kentucky Derby. So now when we move down the list, I got so much respect for a horse like Quip. Boy, 5 starts, he's run well in every one of them, except in that Kentucky Jockey Club as a 2-year-old. He's a fighter. He runs well, but he's just running into one of the best Kentucky Derby fields in so long.
Right, Matt, I agree. I think we could say that about a lot of these horses. Quip is a nice horse. The Tampa Bay Derby was an awesome performance. And the Arkansas Derby, I mean, he hung around. I didn't think he was going to finish second when Magnum Moon accelerated away from him. But another strong performance from Quip. Tough spot here. I might say the same about the next horse, Flame Away.
Yeah, same thing, Brian. I call Flame Away the blue collar horse in here because he comes to work and gives 100% every single time. He runs well and he's tough and he competes. I'd love to own him. He's going to win races during the summer, but not in this Kentucky Derby field, Brian.
On any surface, at any distance, gotta love Flame Away. I'm with you, Matt. Not in this Kentucky Derby field. Next on the list, an interesting horse from American Pharoah's Connection, Solomini.
Yeah, interesting is a good word to use, Brian. I expected better from him in the Arkansas Derby. There always seems to be an excuse. He's a bit of a quirky horse, and all of that does not bode well in the 20-horse field of the Kentucky Derby.
What if he changes leads in the Kentucky Derby? Probably still not enough, but Solomini is an interesting horse, and if somebody wants to use him in their exotics, I wouldn't talk you off. I can't, but he's a nice horse. Next on the list, Bravazzo.
Bravazzo coming off the 8th place performance in the Louisiana Derby after a big win in the Risen Star. I don't know if I could just draw a line through that race, especially this year with the Derby field. Good horse, but I'm not going to use him.
I'll draw a line through his last race, Matt, and go back to his previous race, which was his big race, the Risen Star. That's not nearly good enough to make a strong dent against this year's Kentucky Derby field. Next on the list, we've already talked about a little bit, My Boy Jack.
My Boy Jack, a great effort. I love that his connections went after it and got the points they needed in the Lexington. I like this horse. I like his determinations. I like his closing move. And in any other Derby year, I would be very excited about him. But I still think I might use him in my trifectas.
Yeah, I think My Boy Jack will be passing horses, and I would be surprised if he didn't rally for at least 6th or 7th. I'm not sure if he's going to rally too much better than that. Nice horse, tough spot in this year's Derby. The next horse is a completely different kind of horse, Matt. Promises Fulfilled.
Yep, Promises Fulfilled again. Ran a huge Fountain of Youth and then came back and ran 9th in the Florida Derby. Even similarly, like we said with Bravazzo, even if we draw a line through that Florida Derby, I think this Kentucky Derby field is too much for him.
Promises Fulfilled interests me for one reason, Matt. I think he is going to add speed. I don't see him doing anything but going to the lead or being part of the lead early. First in the Fountain of Youth, last in the Florida Derby doesn't matter to me. I'd like to see him run a strong early pace to make this an honest Derby, but that's all he'll do. Next is Free Drop Billy. Matt, once upon a time, he was my yearling selection out of the Keeneland sale a few years ago. I'm not as high on him as I once was, though.
Yeah, but that was a pretty good pick back then, Brian. I give you credit for that. Free Drop Billy. I thought in the Bluegrass that he might put it all together, but trouble seems to find Free Drop Billy. No matter what happens, something always happens, and I don't like that kind of past performance when you're in the Kentucky Derby.
Well, Sporting Chance bothered him late, but, I think he was going to finish 4th, and he got put up to 3rd. I just don't see a good enough form for Free Drop Billy to expect a big performance in the Derby. Lone Sailor was a bit of a long shot when he was 2nd to Noble Indy in the Louisiana Derby.
Yep, Tom Amoss had that horse ready, and Tom Amoss can come up with a surprise now and then. But once again, if we're not highly rating the Louisiana Derby compared to other preps, this is going to be a tough spot.
Yeah, he's a good enough rallier. He's shown some ability to come from behind and run some good races. He's a horse in other years where I would have thought, he could do something in the Derby. This year, I like other closers quite a bit better, and it's such a deep field. He strikes me as a horse who's going to rally for 9th or 10th. The horse below him, though, I'm a little bit more interested. 18th on the list, Matt, is Hofburg.
Hofburg, only 3 starts in his career, and heading into the Derby, we've mentioned that with other horses. That has to be a concern. Bill Mott, this is a Tappet. Nice rally to get second in the Florida Derby. Going to be rallying here, but I'm afraid he might get too far behind.
I like the talent. I like the looks of the horse. I like the breeding. I like the connections. Awfully tough, though, with only 2 races, 3 lifetime races, and 1 stakes experience where probably Audible was the only horse that ran. I could see him running a good race, but he's up against it a little bit. Number 19 is Frisian Fire.
Yep. The owners of this horse have wanted to get to the Kentucky Derby. It looks like they have made it, but he just doesn't. He can't get the distance in here. Frisian Fire had some nice wins. Kind of a one-turn horse, in my opinion. Legitimate long shot in the Derby.
Yeah, and I'm mixing up him and his sire in the names. Of course, it's Firenze Fire, but I'm like Matt. I don't give him any shot in here. And last but not least is Gronkowski coming from Europe.
Talk about no shot in the race, Brian. I think Gronkowski would have trouble winning an allowance race on the undercard on Derby Day. Getting in on the Euro Trail to the Derby, I don't get it. I don't understand why a horse like this gets an invitation. It isn't going to increase the handle in the Derby because they bet in the Derby in the betting parlors over there. No Gronkowski for me.
Gronkowski, I actually like him quite a bit more than several Americans here, but yeah, too much to ask. I think he's a nice horse, and Jeremy Nocita knows he's a nice horse. I think he's got some talent, but this is too much. Probably picked the wrong year to bring a horse like this over to the Derby. That's 20, Matt. Let's get into our top 10s next. Matt, we've already talked about all the horses, but people want to see our top 10s. I'm going to say this, though. My top 10 is going to change before the Kentucky Derby. For right now, Matt, on my top 10, I went with what I think they've accomplished this year. That will not be how I bet the Derby. We'll have more about how I bet the Derby in the coming weeks. Who's your number 1?
I've liked Audible. I've liked his turn of foot. I've got Audible at number 1.
4 for 4, 2 easy graded stakes wins. I think Magnum Moon has accomplished the most this year. I have him at number 1, and I have Mendelssohn, who won a stake in Ireland before that gigantic performance in the UAE Derby at number 2.
I've got Magnum Moon at number 2. I've got the Pletcher horses 1 and 2 in here.
Okay, number 3 for you, Matt. Are you liking the Santa Anita Derby winner?
I've got Justify at number 3. Again, only 3 races. Could he be the best horse? Absolutely. I think this year, any one of the top 5, 6 horses could be the Kentucky Derby winner.
But with only 1 stakes race, 1 stakes win, I couldn't put him ahead of my number 3, who's Audible. You're number 1. 2 for 2 this year, 2 graded stakes wins in Florida, both easy. I think he deserves to be this high on this type of list. Number 3. Number 4 for me is the Santa Anita Derby winner and undefeated Justify.
And for me, number 4 is Mendelssohn. I have liked Mendelssohn since he won the juvenile turf, hoping that we would get to see him in the Kentucky Derby. And here he is. Could be a super talent.
Probably the best performance so far of the year was his UAE Derby. Number 5 for me, Matt, is Bolt Doro. He ran into McKinsey and he ran into Justify, but I still think his 2 races this year are very good, so I have him at number 5.
I have Good Magic at number 5. I am hoping that Chad Brown has been planning this campaign carefully, and that the Kentucky Derby has been the ultimate goal, and the Bluegrass was a very nice step, but he's going to have to keep improving.
Who's your number 6, Matt?
I got Vino Rosso. I love the Wood Memorial performance. Johnny V picks Vino Rosso out of the Pletcher bunch.
Number 6 for me, Good Magic, for much of the reasons we've already said. I know the class is there, and I think he will move forward. But the Bluegrass win was enough to get him number 6 on my list. And the Wood Memorial win was enough to get Vino Rosso number 7 on my list. But I think there is still more to see from number 7, Vino Rosso.
At number 7, I've got Noble Indy. I'm kind of going all in on the Pletcher horses. Seems to me that Todd has got this whole point system in Kentucky Derby figured out. So I threw Noble Indy in there to complete the foursome.
Well, you have Noble Indy ahead of Bolt Doro, Matt. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Noble Indy beats Bolt Doro in the Kentucky Derby, you can have my house, you can have my dog. It's not going to happen, sir. Noble Indy did not beat much in an allowance race. He lost to not much in the Risen Star, and I don't think he beat much in the Louisiana Derby. To have him ahead of Bolt Doro, sir, I don't get it at all. But anyway, you're welcome to put him number 7. My number 8 is My Boy Jack, who I do think was the best horse in that Louisiana Derby.
I have Bolt Doro at number 8. And Brian, I wouldn't take your house from you, but I do like your dog. He's a sweetheart. So that I might consider. I'm sorry, Bolt Doro fans, but I don't think that Bolt Doro has gotten better. And every once in a while, in the Kentucky Derby, and me putting him at number 8 is kind of looking a little bit ahead to when I'm going to start wagering. I'm not going to use Bolt Doro.
And I will use Bolt Doro, but I won't use my number 9, Flame Away. But again, my list currently is about what they've accomplished. And Flame Away, a stakes winner this year, and he just keeps firing good races, even though he's lost the Tampa Bay Derby and the Bluegrass in his last 2.
I could say the same thing about my number 9, who is Quip. I'm not sure how much I'll use him when we get to our wagering shows, but horses run 5 times and 3 wins, a second in the Arkansas Derby. You can't say anything bad about the horse.
Absolutely. And your number 10, Matt?
My number 10 is My Boy Jack. And as we mentioned in the field rundown, when it comes to the closers and the horses who are going to be running at the end, My Boy Jack is at the top of my list there.
My Boy Jack is a good rallier. That's why I had him at number 8. Number 10, and a 2-time stakes winner. My number 10 is the horse I needled you so badly about, Matt. Noble Indy. He is the Louisiana Derby winner, so he makes my top 10 list. Not going to be on my tickets, though. All right, folks, there's our Kentucky Derby top 10. Like I said, mine's going to change. I'm sure Matt's will change a little bit, too, as we really talk about who we think will win this Kentucky Derby, possibly the best Kentucky Derby of the 21st century as far as depth of quality. And, I don't think that's any hyperbole, sir, to say that this Derby looks like it could be something special.
Yeah, and folks, you saw Brian and I having fun debating certain horses, and there's going to be a lot of that over the next 20 days or so heading to the Kentucky Derby. We'll be back with 2 more Derby preview shows when we start talking more about how to bet the race and what's been going on as the horses get ready.
Matt, we need to say thank you to our sponsor, the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. Also, folks, we appreciate you watching every week. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel right here on Horse Racing Nation. Matt, we're excited about the Kentucky Derby. We're also excited about what we're doing in the industry as well with Derby Day Racing. We can't wait to bring more fans like you, more people who might be interested in becoming a racehorse owner. Derby Day Racing Partnership. We've signed on Buff Bradley, a terrific guy and an excellent trainer to train our first 2-year-old partnership. We'll be buying horses soon, Matt, so that is a thrill.
grab some friends and join us at Derby Day Racing. We got 2 more shows coming up on the Derby Trail, so stay with us at HorseCenter. And as always, I want to thank Brett Workman for putting together the show.
Thank you, Brett. And as we leave you today, folks, let's take a look down under at the Wonder Mare. Winks did it again, 25 in a row. Let's trail off with Winks winning the Queen Anne.
And he sends the stallion Ford Ambitious around the outside of the field. Then coming through Success Days, Humidor shuffle back a bit. Happy, Clapper and Winks, they're both back last as they go to the 600-metre mark. Galo Shop leads narrowly from Classic Uniform the outside and Ambitious striding up on the outside. They're followed just behind them then to Odeon from Success Days coming through. Consensus, Winks getting to the outside. Humidor the inside of her. Happy Clapper needs luck as they straighten up. Galo Shop tries to kick. 3 lengths clear, but Winks is getting into her work, and they're broken clear from the rest. Galo Shop in front, but Winks moves up on the outside. Winks takes the lead from Galo Shop, and here's her second, Queen Elizabeth. This is a silver jubilee moment on the throne for 25 consecutive wins to equal the